Right, I'm almost ready. Have you done this kind of thing before?
I long time ago in the 60s with John Freeman, that face-to-face thing. But,
Yeah, but I mean anything.
he was a hopeless amateur, broke down, wept halfway through the interview.
How did it resolve that particular encounter?
I gave him a hanky and told him to pull himself together. I did a bit of a appearance on the Tube with Paula Yates and Jules Holland. Played a bit of boogie on that, but I'm not radio. I've only done television, so this is all a new world to me.
Sorry, I wasn't listening to that. Are you ready to go?
Yes, I'm off any minute.
Sir Arthur, your work with eels is very well documented. It's perhaps less well known that during one experiment you came very close to death. How did that happen?
I was trying to test the strength of the eel and whether the strength of the eel was enhanced by an injection of thiobizilin, which, as you probably know, is a steroid much used by Betty Grable in the early days of Hollywood, which gave her those wonderful legs because she was born with legs only 3 inches long. And her parents were determined to have a world-class film star-style daughter. But through administration of this drug and what is called tugging, namely pulling by the ankles, they managed to get Grable's legs up to the required film star length.
Wasn't there also a functional problem in this process? Sometimes things got horribly out of hand.
Yes, well, there was one occasion, I don't know if you've ever seen the sequence, but there are outtakes in the British War Museum which show Grable starting off a dance routine with the very long legs and winding up basically looking like a tea cosy. And the effects of the drug and the tugging were variable. There were many days she couldn't shoot because her legs got, frankly, too long for comfort.
They weren't just long, were they?
They
flexed backwards.
She could walk both ways, yes, which was an effect which startled Louis B. Mayer. Once I remember Louis B. Mayer was on his casting couch, casting himself, and suddenly he thought he saw Betty Grable walking in. In fact, she was walking out. And that got up his nose. He was easily slighted.
Let's get back to you fighting the eel on the table. I believe during the course of that encounter you did very nearly die. Did you ever think during the struggle, I don't care if it kills me?
Well, there were moments when I thought, well, I've had a long life, and I've had a varied life, and I've had just about enough of it, really, all these bloody eels. Bloody eels. I mean, as soon as you get hold of one, they start slithering all over the table. You ask them what's the secret of their jaw moving, they don't say a bloody thing. So I was tempted. But there was work to be done, and it will be done. And I will be done.
It makes one sorry to hear you talk like this. Many would say that before the eels you were a different man.
Well, before the eels, of course, I was caught up in my love life.
Caught up?
Caught up, yes. I don't know if you remember the cha-cha boogies of Edmundo Ross, but Lita Rosa was a magnificent singer, rather similar in a way to Alma Cogan, but without the buns. And we had not an affair, more of a correspondence. I sent her a postcard from, I think it was Tibet. Yeah, never got a reply because she was a married woman, and so it all petered out.
But you still haven't recovered. There's something unresolved about that relationship.
I'm not easily given to tears, but not hearing back from Lita was a bit of a body blow.
What was it about her that really moved you?
Her name, I think. Lita. Lita, Rosa.
And as a result of this grave disappointment, I believe you dived headlong into a life of ill-advised abandon.
Yes, well, to try and forget her, I embarked on a series of meaningless affairs. They were just... They weren't even flings. They were nightcaps.
Did you ever meet Eric Clapton when you were there?
Several times. He was right nice, a great comfort to me, Eric, because he's been through so much, hasn't he? I mean, having to play the guitar all the time must be absolutely awful for him. But Eric is a pathetic individual, really. Give me Ginger Rogers or Ginger Baker, whatever the other one is. One who went to Africa and taught the natives how to play the drums.
You were arrested with a gun in the vicinity of Eric Clapton's apartment in L.A.
Not arrested. I was taking part in the racial violence in Los Angeles after the Rodney King incident.
Which side were you on?
I was trying to mediate between the police and Rodders. I've got to know him very well. He's a very nice chap. And we were having a Big Mac together, and the police blundered in to finish off the job they hadn't completed. So I tried to mediate by saying, "There he is, officer," to try and calm the whole thing down, because one hates to see Los Angeles go up in flames unless one's got a camera running.
That was reported in one of the Sunday papers at the time as the dark soul of Sir Arthur Streeb-Greebling. That night was a trail of wanton destruction, which many ascribed to your near-death experience, leaving you bereft of any hope.
I like to think I mowed down as many whites as I did blacks, and the Koreans did very badly out of the whole deal.
Do you feel any pride now about that?
I feel nothing but pride. That's all I do feel. An empty pride, a hopeless vanity, a dreadful arrogance, a stupefyingly futile conceit. But at least it's something to hang on to.
And the fact that you got away...
With murder, yes. That's not mince words.
And had to pay a menial fine.
Well, I don't know what you call a menial fine. It was, I had to do community work. I had to go and teach Tatum O'Neill to play tennis.
Is there anything left for you to do once you've finished with the eels?
Well, I still got to work on her backhand.
Sir Arthur, it does interest me. Why did you agree to these interviews?
The reason is really very, very simple. I've lived a long time. I've been distorted, I've been misrepresented, and I've been quoted accurately, which is perhaps the most appalling. And I thought in simple conversation with another human being, I could get some things off my chest and onto other people's.
What question would you ask yourself?
I think the most fascinating question of all is that one which you didn't ask last time.
And that's the one you would ask yourself?
That's the one I would ask myself. I'm not sure if I have the reply yet. It's a sort of...
Well, let's see. Ask yourself that question and then see if you have an answer.
Not at the moment.
You didn't ask the question, though.
Perhaps you need to probe. I internalized it.
Wow, but perhaps you need to get quite firm with yourself.
No, I don't have the answer.
Perhaps we'll come back to that.
I'm sure we will.
A couple of minutes left, but I think that... I'm sorry to hear about the stroke, incidentally.
Yes, it was. Suddenly the whole side of her body went, and she can still make signals.
Mm. And I mean, it's obviously we ought to talk about the end of your life, really. In later life, one often follows very quickly on the heels of the other.
No, well, whatever you like, really. But I really should give her a call.
Yes, Sir Arthur,
you can't pick up a phone now, of course. So they have to put it through loudspeakers into the ward.
Mm. Sir Arthur, you're quite clearly, to anyone who could see you, nearing the end of your life. Who will receive the greater part of your fortune?
I've made it very clear that all my assets go to a trust. I've often thought of giving all my money away, but then I've often thought again.
I've just had a rather entertaining thought of you dying, your last breath coming out of your mouth. How would you like that to happen?
Well,
Guess you sort of collapse on the floor somewhere in public, or
you find the prospect of my dying very amusing.
well, I don't. Yes, I do.
Yes, you do. Yes. What about your own death? How do you view that?
I'm just
equal good humour.
Well, no, I wouldn't look as good lying on my back like a tortoise, sort of burbling fluids of some kind. Well, let's talk about prisons. Your report on prisons is published tomorrow. What's it going to say?
I think the key finding is that criminals are people who should not be treated with kid gloves. They are the dregs. And dregs should be kept at the bottom of the barrel, otherwise the wine will never get to the surface.
Is this in any way linked with your experience of your own father, who, as we know, was a profound criminal?
My father had criminal tendencies which he exercised to the full. It was a learning experience to be a child in my father's household, or whichever household he put me in. He was a very firm man, and he felt that the best education I could possibly have was to be put in prison and raised by hardened murderers. We were woken at dawn by the sound of hanging. We had to sleep naked because the warders feared that we might do ourselves injuries, stabbing ourselves with buttons and things like that. And we used to draw straws about which clothes we got into, because there was only 50 pairs of trousers and there were 400 inmates.
How did you as a 4-year-old fare amongst grown men in this scrabble for clothes?
I tended not to get any clothes. All 4-year-olds are not as big as 20-year-olds. So if I was lucky, I used to be put into somebody's pocket or stuffed down somebody's waistband. There was one particularly thin prisoner who I got to know as Uncle Edward. And he used to stuff me down his trousers every now and then and take me out to the turnip fields and jiggle me up and down.
Did you keep in touch with him after you left?
No, he died in the field, and I was left there for several days, because the policy in those days was if people died at work, it was taken to be dumb insolence, and so they were left as an example to the other prisoners.
Did you hold this against your father at all?
We never spoke about it. I must say that at the time I resented being in prison for crimes I had not committed, and forced into the company of, at best, rough diamonds, to be frank. Because I became prematurely old as a 4-year-old. I had the body of a 4-year-old and the mind of an 80-year-old.
You became a heavy smoker at the age of 4.
Yes, and this led to me falling out with Uncle Edward, because at 4 I was getting through 20 cigarettes a day in his trousers.
What contacts did you have with the outside world when you were in prison?
I used to see planes going over sometimes.
What did you think?
I thought I'd like to be in one of those. I really would. Anything in the air, I just longed for that. The war came as a big relief.
Well, yes, you were conscripted, weren't you? At the age of, was it?
6. I joined the Foreign Legion, and I was stationed just outside of Tunis with a bunch of Belgians.
Now, you were fighting alongside Rex Harrison at one point.
Yes, Rex was awfully brave. He could have been an actor, you know, but he preferred the army. He preferred to be side by side with legionnaires singing in French.
Could he sing?
Rex? Could never sing, and this is another sign of his courage, that later in life, when most people would have considered themselves past it, let alone able to sing. He started to sing and got money for it.
When did you re-establish contact with your father, then?
When my father learnt that I had become buddies with Rex Harrison, he wrote me a letter asking if he could meet Rex. And I, of course, said I would try and arrange it. And I did. He met Rex. I wasn't there, of course. He didn't want to meet me. He said he'd already met me and hadn't liked what he'd seen.
Now, when he met your father, they fought.
They had a skirmish, because my father suggested to Rex that they collaborate on a musical for Esther Williams. And my father thought if he could get her and Sonia Henney together, they could combine underwater and ice. So Esther would be under the ice and Sonia on top of the ice. So you'd have this combination of a woman frozen underwater looking up through the ice, up Sonia Henney's little skirt. And Rex thought it was a wonderful idea and took it to Louis B. Mayer. And that's the last my father heard of it.
Is this in any way associated with the episode in which you were forced to stand on a frozen lake by your father?
He suggested I stand in the middle of Lake Ontario during a particularly bleak winter in Canada. And I stood there, and I was waiting for a whistle or something, some sort of signal that I could go to the shore. But the whistle never came.
How long were you there for?
About a year and a quarter. Anyway, I really don't like talking about this sort of thing, because it was all a long time ago, and my memory of it is very detailed. I can remember every single pine needle on that trudge through the forest towards Toronto.
I hope you won't mind if I hold you to it, because the next time we want to interview you, you'll probably be dead. Apart from the perilous cold, what other dangers did you have to fight off?
Well, possibly the most dangerous element of the stay, as I call it, were the bears. Because, strictly speaking, they're not vegetarians. And it was hard at times to fob them off.
But you succeeded, and furthermore, in time, became respected by them.
I became loved by the bears, yes. It was when an old granny bear had come round one evening. She was on her last legs and wheezing, and bits of fur were falling out. She was really in a very bad way. And I nestled up to her, gave her, I think it was a fish finger I had in my hamper, and she gasped with pleasure and fell to the ice and expired. And it was then that I skinned her and put her fur on me and basically masqueraded as a bear for 9 months.
And how did you end up leaving the ice?
I decided to walk off.
Had you, do you think during that time, fallen in love with frozen water?
There was a certain bleak beauty about the place which appealed to me. And even now, years and years later, in the middle of the night, I'll get up and go to the fridge, get out an ice cube and just perch on it, just to bring back those memories, like Proust used to dip his biscuits in his tea.
Right. Sorry it took a bit longer this evening.
No, that's all right. I must say you're fairly persistent in that particular line of questioning. Huh?
Yes, I like to.
Really feel I was being grilled.
I'm sorry about that. It was
No.
just.
No. I like to meet somebody who treats me really badly.
Good evening.
Good
Sorry,
evening,
I'm
yeah.
sorry I'm late. I've got rather a tough schedule at the moment. Which,
Yes, well,
I'm sure you can understand. Well, yes.
I've
obviously,
made myself at home here. You can see the little
well, that's good.
hammock I've put up
You've
there.
got lots of time, and I haven't because I'm quite busy. And
Right, I thought
I've
we'd
got quite a lot of
start-
important things to do.
Yes, I thought
Which
we'd
it must be
start
rather
on
nice
my-
not having important things to do and generally having a lot of time to fritter away.
Yes, I enjoy.
Sorry, you were saying?
I was just saying that today we could start on the subject which is we mentioned last week we didn't get around to, which was the beekeeping.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what.
I mean, I've got quite a few
Since
anecdotes
yours-
because I started off with just one bee and
Are we rolling? Yeah.
used it to attract another bee and eventually got a swarm going. And it's quite an interesting anecdote.
It sounds dull to me, actually.
Well, it's very lifelike.
Well, perhaps you'd like to start it off then, since...
Yes, well, if you ask me a question, I mean, a simple introduction, like tell us about your beekeeping or something
All right,
like that.
I'm not really very interested in this. Hello, Sir Arthur, how are you?
Fine. I had some bees in my youth and put them to work making honey.
Now, in your address to the Royal Society tomorrow, you intend to reveal the fossilised remains of the infant Christ. How do you feel that will go down?
Well, it is a remarkable discovery. A group of us were up in the Promised Land, as I believe it was called, and we were just rooting around for some sticks to start a fire with. And by some accident, this tiny little form had been preserved perfectly. So I picked it up, put it in my knapsack, and brought it home and had it scientifically examined at my institute. It's Christ at the age of about 9 months. Just beginning to walk, more crawling than walking, crawling across the desert in search of followers, really. And then, of course, he died.
So what are the implications, then, if Christ was fossilised when he was that small?
He was practicing resurrection. Because if you're going to resurrect yourself in front of thousands of people and found a whole religion on it, you don't want to make a cock-up, do you? So from a very early age, he was dropping dead and resurrecting himself. There's probably thousands and thousands of bodies of Jesus, and this is just the youngest one.
A series of larvae?
Almost, yes, pupae. In fact, he never really got it right at the end. I mean, it's not as if he was pronounced dead on the cross and then flew up and flapped his wings and said, "Hello, boys." He did it rather complicated way. He had to be put in a cave, old boulder, put in front of it. I mean, Paul Daniels could do that. But so I think he never really quite got the hang of it.
Could you tell how quickly these practice resurrections happened?
It took about 6 months. He died, as planned. Then, just as he was passing away, he suddenly forgot how to do it. But instinct carried him through, and gradually he resurrected himself. By which time he was under the sand because of the wind, and he not only had to resurrect himself, he had to fight his way to the surface, and of course died whilst doing that.
Suffocation.
Suffocation, he was smothered by sand, so he died again. And there's some controversy about whether my tiny Christ is in fact the 9-month-old TC or the 9.5-month.
This fits in with your theory that as Christ practiced resurrection throughout his life, he didn't do it flawlessly, did he? He produced several of himself at once.
Well, there was a time when he overdid it and reproduced 18 other Christs. So he had to wipe out 17 of them.
But he had to stop them resurrecting themselves once they'd done it.
Yes, he had to keep them underwater. I think St. Paul mentions it in passing.
Now, have you spoken to the Vatican about this?
I've had words with their envoy over here, the special nuncio, and he's absolutely thrilled to bits and has suggested somewhere a venue where we could put it up and have it start earning its keep.
But does he know that you intend to clone from its tissue?
No, I haven't gone into that with him because, frankly, it's none of his business. And it is a business.
Who's putting up the money for this?
Honda.
Now, when or if this is successful,
Mm-hmm.
what do you feel the result of it will be?
Well, I am very much hoping to be the first to shake Jesus by the hand and say, "Well done."
How far are you prepared to take this? Say the experiment is 4/5 successful and you end up with some animated tissue which is not particularly man-like. Would you allow that to carry on living?
Well, I think one would go on gut reaction. I think if one had 3/4 of Jesus, you'd know that it was Jesus, and I would settle for that. If there's a
What
little
diagnostic signs are you going to go for
just
that make it Jesus?
breathing,
A voice?
A voice, yes, maybe, but he could sign his message. You know, he could wave his hands around like they do on Channel 4.
Who will provide the words in that case?
Well, then we'd pre-record something with Martin Jarvis or John Hurt or somebody suitable could do the voice under.
Project a little sort of moving shape over his mouth.
We could probably just with an elastic band, we could get some movement. Well, Oprah Winfrey's interested.
Has it altered your
Opera
own...
has lost a lot of weight, hasn't she, and gained a lot of weight. One moment anorexic, the next moment bulimic, and in between regressing to child abuse.
And where would the words come from?
Oh, we just do whatever he said in the Bible, same stuff, just recycle it a bit. You know, what he said was perfectly good.
I think you know what I'm getting at. I'm actually trying to find out whether you will be using him as some sort of conduit for your own warped ideas.
No, it'll be his warped ideas, not mine.
And what role do BMW play?
They'll be furnishing the vehicles.
Will he not be frightened by modern transport?
Yes. The Sony Corporation are interested in a sort of hover donkey. It can move at about 110 miles an hour.
Now, I'm told that the Japanese are more seriously involved than that.
In the miniaturization of Jesus, yes, because given his consent, of course.
And what will the Japanese do with these miniature Christs?
They will market them in the normal way, because there's a lot of people out there, people who are yearning to find Christ and who don't have the time to go out and look for him in person, who would like to have Christ through the letterbox.
How will they eat?
Who?
These micro Christs.
Conventionally, I think, through a tiny little tube which will be supplied.
And how will you guarantee their safety against...
theft?
And dogs?
Well, showing a tiny Christ in Alsatian is like a red rag to whatever they call those big things with horns.
Bishops.
Bishops, yes. So, no, there are no guarantees. You've got a tiny Christ, he's 6 inches high, he's about 3 centimetres deep, and he has all the organs.
Where do they come in?
Well, just to... Look, I don't want to... This will be rather preempting my address tomorrow.
All right, well, let me put it to you like this. Don't you think that if you clone Christ, he will in some way want to remonstrate with you as soon as he can?
Well, that's up to him. But he'll be pretty lost without the batteries.
Right, Sir Arthur, thank you. It took a while, didn't it? But I suppose we got it in the end.
I think well worth it, yes.
Can I have it back now?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I don't think it suits me. Do you think the stuff about the beekeeping went well?
Yeah. Actually, I think it does suit you, in a way. What are you doing this evening?
Well, I nothing written down, but I was thinking of going along to the YMCA and have a swim.
Fancy a stroll first?
Yes, that'd be nice.
Where do you think?
Well, Tottenham Court Road's quite nice, you know, the swimming pool, the oasis a bit.
I love walking up and down there.
What?
Well, I'll just introduce the reason you're here, Sir Arthur.
Yes, so just one thing. It would be all right if Gavin came in and did my hair. He's a very nice young man from Camden Town. He started his own particular salon. In case I didn't have time to have it done afterwards.
Well, no is what I think we have
yes,
to...
Yes, he's in now, and you might as well let him stand there.
If you could just ask him to leave, because it will...
I'll ask him to leave once we finish the interview, yes.
Or before would be better.
Well, that's rather tricky, isn't it? Because he's begun to go into the pre-snipping ritual, which is he begins to limber up.
Sir Arthur, I have to be sort of clear. It will actually be very disruptive. It's really not done.
Well, Gavin. Yes, I'm sorry I misled you. Yes, now I'll go on the bus and I'll get a receipt.
Good. Now, Sir Arthur Streeb-Greebling, it's 50 years since you returned from Japan and your experience as a prisoner of war.
Yes, 50 years to the day.
You've seldom talked about this, but you've agreed to discuss it this evening. How were you captured?
Well, I was in charge of a small unit of men, most of whom, alas, perished. I, seeing that there was nothing I could do to save them since they were already dead, entered into what is called a concentration camp under Japanese command and was there throughout the war period.
Now, this is when you were the senior British officer in a prisoner of war camp which was building a railway line.
That's right. And I think anyone travelling on that line today will recognise the merits of the technology involved, because it's awfully difficult in that heat, carving through forests and deserts, mountains and valleys, to get a line going dead straight from Tokyo to the destination, which at that time was unknown.
You talk with some feeling about the work that was involved in building this railway. You talk less about the fact that you didn't waste a single calorie of energy in making it yourself. You had nothing to do with the hard work.
I don't quite understand the question.
Well, you talk about the difficulties of building this railway, the
it
suffering
was very
that the men went through.
I told you, it was very difficult because there was nothing there. We had to import steel from Great Britain and the United States. Walt Disney, I believe, provided the last links.
But you say we had to do it.
As you know full well, the seas were filled with enemy submarines, and just to get the steel and the iron there, that was work enough.
But you keep saying we had to do this. Isn't that a dishonest use of the word when you were perched on a mattress watching your men sweat their guts out?
Well, as part of the arrangement, I was given accommodation slightly better than the other personnel, but not as good, I may say, as my boss, for want of a better word, General Nihao.
You did get on rather well with your Japanese captors, didn't you?
Everybody is human, including your words, Japanese captors. I worked in the best interests of the British personnel under my command, and I attempted to organise an escape.
Yes, and then you told the commandant 24 hours before it was put into operation.
I informed my superior, but I'd already told my men to do it the day after so they wouldn't get caught.
And yet they all did get caught.
They got caught, they went on the wrong day.
Many of them had been driven insane by the work they were doing, and those that could testify claimed that you had helped in that mental decaying process.
I never physically beat anybody, and
but we all know it's perfectly easy.
You can see film footage showing me not beating anybody. You can see
4.5 seconds of film.
You can see film footage of me sitting in my office trying to get the air conditioning working.
And 4.5 seconds of film proves that you didn't hit them. For the rest.
Why would I hit my own men unless they were shirking?
Well, let's leave that aside.
Leave that aside, please.
I put it to you that it's perfectly possible to drive a man out of his mind simply by using words and mental torture.
Well, the fact that I may have said to a subaltern, I may have said, get a move on. If that is mental cruelty, well, I'm a Dutchman.
Is it or is it not mental cruelty to appear to that man as his wife in the middle of the night?
I would call that a kindness in the conditions we were living in. Any man who got anybody coming to his cell posing as a man, woman, or lizard was welcome, because...
And then withhold favours?
I did, yes.
What I'm saying is that you persecuted this man until he went out of his mind, and he wasn't the only one.
I played hard to get. And I may have talked about marriage, but, I mean, you know, we were both drunk. Well, at least I was drunk, because that sake is remarkably powerful, isn't it?
And your men didn't even have enough water.
Well, nor did I.
You had something to drink.
I had sake, and sake alone, because the water supplies, this is one of the things, I still correspond with General Nihao. we have a long-standing joke about incredibly efficient the Japanese may be, but in a prisoner of war camp, can you get a cold drink? And the answer, I'm afraid, was no. But that's neither here nor there.
You needed severe coaxing to leave that camp.
Well, I had acquired a leasehold interest in the property, which covered 212 acres of prime land, rather too close to Hiroshima for my liking, but very verdant, and with the opportunity to put in a hotel, leisure facilities. But negotiations broke down.
And it was only that made you return to this country?
That and the ticket.
Sir Arthur, sorry, I have to draw attention to something which people won't be able to see. You have, during the past 15 minutes, been agitating so firmly at the sleeve of your jacket that it's now come off. Now, you're good at disguising it with the tone of your voice, but I read your body language as something akin to, I'm telling lies.
Well, it's a very old coat. I must say, you have rather hit me below the belt there, because I had no idea that you were going to raise the subject of this herringbone being torn off.
Well, I must say I wouldn't have, unless you had done it.
Does the sight of the flesh excite you? Or?
I can think of more attractive features on you.
Well, these speckles on my arm.
That's Candida, though, isn't it?
Candida?
Isn't it an infection?
I don't think it's an infection. It just spreads like wildfire. Once it starts up round about the shoulder, and then gradually it sort of speckles down towards the wrist, and then it runs out. I dare say it will start on my hands very soon, and then run out at the nails.
Well, don't get me wrong. I didn't wish to be physically insulting, and there are certain aspects of your appearance which many. I mean, it's no secret.
It's nerves.
Mm.
I'm not used to being in a room with a man.
You see, that's my lie detector test, really. When a man pulls the sleeve off his jacket,
he's fibbing.
Yeah.
Yes, I've thought you would think that. Yes.
Will you just grant us the answer to one question with an honest, straightforward answer?
Yes. Well, it depends what the question is.
Well, in many interviews.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much.
In many interviews, the question that perhaps would extract the most valuable answer is the one which is never asked.
Yes, well, you haven't asked that one yet, so I've really not been in a position to answer it.
Right, well, here we go. Obviously, I can't ask the question which has never been asked, otherwise it, by definition, stops being.
Yeah.
But you know that question. If you could keep it in your mind and give me the answer, then we would get some value. No.
The answer is no.
And what do you mean by that?
No is what I mean by that.
Has the answer for you ever been anything other than no?
No. Then the answer has always been no.
So if I were to say to you, has the answer always been no?
I would say, hold on a minute.
Good evening, Sir Arthur.
Good evening.
How's the voice? Is it entirely your voice?
Yes, it's almost completely gone. Laryngitis talking too much.
There is something we used to do with Robin Day, which we could perhaps...
Yes, a glass of water or something. Something like that.
Okay, if you could just sit quite still.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, that's much better, yes.
We're rolling, so whenever you're
right. Yes, I'm ready.
Sir Arthur, before we come on to talk about the orchestra, you were telling me how your life had been saved by a puff adder.
Yes, it was a stroke of luck, actually, because I was in Dorking having lunch with an old girlfriend, Rosita, and she had a puff adder. It was a family heirloom, you know, and she was just pouring me a cup of tea, and the puff adder jumped out of the little basket, and I immediately recognised it for what it was, a deadly snake, and rushed out of the room, and moments later the whole house blew up. Poor Rosita was blown up in the air. There was no saving her, so I didn't go back. I just left that to the emergency services, and her house had been the subject of an attack by a former friend of mine, old business colleague, who had got it into his head that somehow or other that I had run away with funds which were due to him.
It must have broken down pretty badly for you to have murdered him.
Well, it's tit for tat, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, that type of thing, because he had attempted to blow me up, and in so doing only destroyed the innocent life of a Guatemalan refugee. And I take against people who blow up people who I would like to go to bed with. So I wouldn't say I murdered him, I allowed him to die.
Beneath your own hands and body?
Yes, he was beneath, I think. He started off on top. He was having some tea at Fortnum and Mason. And in those days they had those awful beaded tablecloths. And I positioned myself under the table and attacked him from below.
In an unashamed way, really?
Yes, I was very blatant about it. I think if you're strangling somebody, there's no point pretending that you're giving them a shave, you know.
Caused considerable and long-lasting mental damage to many of the people who witnessed that attack.
It was a horrifying attack. I mean, all the witnesses said that it was the most unpleasant episode they'd ever seen at Fortnum's. Because people go in there to have a bit of a seed cake and a cup of tea, and they don't expect to see live strangling.
But you became rather attached to this method of surprising business partners, didn't you?
Yes, to the extent that it became predictable, and I had to adopt another method. Yes, once I emerged from a huge vat of watercress soup.
A one-off sort of thing?
It was very much a one-off. I prefer to just lay on a trolley with nice petit four and things like that, and then just jump off the trolley onto the victim.
How did you feel when Leon Britton and co. started mimicking your personal style of...
I was furious, because Leon is a naturally witty man and a gifted athlete, and if he'd continued high hurdling, I think he could have been an Olympian. But Leon, for some reason, got attracted to imitating me, and he used to get onto trolleys and get himself pushed through restaurants for absolutely no reason other than attention-seeking, I think he was. I don't think he was much loved as a child, and this phase of his life has continued up to the present day. He's not much loved as an adult either.
Where did it all go wrong between you and him?
Well, I used to attend meetings as Leon Britton, often making sure that I arrived 10 seconds before he did, causing him trouble at the door, because once the doorman has admitted one Leon Britton, it seems a little bit implausible that another one should turn up 10 seconds later. So I caused a little bit of harmless fun for him. I think that's probably why he went to Europe, where they recognise him.
But it was through Leon Britton that you met and got to wrestle with Michael Heseltine.
Well, Heseltine is an interesting man because he's got many strings to his bow. He likes to relax with very violent physical exercise. And he employed Rudy the Giant Vacuum Cleaner, who was one of the World Wrestling Federation stars at that time, to do workouts in his barn. And they used to wrestle each other, well, late into the night, in a sort of improvised ring made of bales of hay. And I used to go along there just as a referee, really, and to fix the results, because Heseltine liked to win. And Rudy, the Giant Vacuum Cleaner, was also a man who didn't like to lose, so the fights were often rather torrid.
Now, it's said that under this, some would describe it as guidance, he developed an over-enthusiasm for use of his physical prowess at perhaps inappropriate moments.
Yes, I always remember King Faisal being hurled to the floor at Heathrow by the Heseltine handy.
Now, you've never mentioned these incidents in public before, and it does interest me why you've maintained such a rigorous media silence for the last 10 years.
Everything in life is about appearances, and I restrict my appearances as much as I can. And this is the only appearance per se that I am making this year.
Well, yes, it's not television here, is it? And you haven't appeared on television for over 10 years.
No, this is not television. I prefer radio in many ways because the fact is that the radio is easier to look good on than television.
Is it not true that the reason you won't appear on television is because a crack pipe can't be hidden?
It can be hidden, and I am willing to own up to the errors I've made. And if there's any young people listening, for goodness sake, don't spend £1,000 a day on crack, because you can get it a lot cheaper than that in Leicester Square.
So on television, you would not be able to last Without resorting to one of the tools of your addiction?
I would have to, after really 1.5 minutes to be realistic, and I think we are in the business of honesty here. After 1.5 minutes, I would have to leave the studio, unless the presenter was himself, unless he was able to inject me, which I think the viewer would object to.
Well, there was a failed experiment on a talk show when you appeared with an intravenous device which came from beneath the chair.
No, I think you're confusing that with Joan Rivers, who did come from beneath the chair, and I sat next to her. But
that's right, yes.
Joan is not a prescribed substance, she's just a pain in the arse.
Can you describe what it feels like to wake up in the morning
not
without...
Not unless you've got something there with you, because I'm reaching the end of my tether. Thank you very much, yes, it helps. Now, I tell you, the downside of this is you feel awful, but the upside is you feel terrific. And where do you buy these?
King's Cross.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Anyway, I can talk for another minute.
How did the drugs affect your writing of the Queen's speech?
Improved it a great deal.
Opium too helped Her Majesty to broadcast the speech, didn't it?
Well, I'm talking out of school here, but it is well known in court circles that the Queen, in particular, is fond of dancing in the nude prior to speaking engagements. The routine is she puts on some Thin Lizzy, rips her clothes off, and just throws herself onto the marble, which they have at the palace, it's part of the deal, and writhes around, and then she is showered by footmen, composes herself, takes her shot, and looks serene.
Why were you fired from the role of writing the Queen's speech?
We left by mutual agreement.
When was the last time you saw the Queen?
Last night.
What happened?
I, as a favour, gave her some, I think it was opium. It could have been Feminex.
Now, Sir Arthur, I should point out that during that last answer you held up a legally threatening note.
It's not a threat, it's just a statement of fact. That, something along the lines of, if you pursue this line of questioning, then we shall pursue you through the courts.
I see. OK, well, perhaps you could tell us about the occasion that you came to sing a song with the voice of Frank Sinatra to over 1,000 paying punters.
Well, the episode with when I borrowed his larynx, yes. Well, actually, it was a whim, really. I just thought people would like to hear Strangers of the Night sung by somebody other than Frank Sinatra, but with Frank Sinatra's voice.
And he was sleeping, but did he agree to the exit of his...
There was tacit consent. His bodyguards had no complaints.
Were they conscious at the time?
They were very, very helpful in getting the larynx out of the throat and into my briefcase. Luigi, in particular, was a charming man. And he said, well, Mr. Sinatra will never miss it. He's having a dream now. You can tell by the way his elbows keep twitching. He's having one of those exciting dreams of his homeland. So we just went off into the night, and I flew to Capri, and Gracie Fields and I sang the biggest aspidestra in the world, and closed on Strangers of the Night, in a My Way medley.
Now, I have to ask you, did you not do this purely out of financial greed?
I'm more than happy to answer that question, but I would prefer to do it without the tape spinning round. So if you just stop the tape, I'll give you the answer.
Right, we've stopped the tapes.
Thank you.
And what was the answer?
What was the question?
Well, it was about money and whether you made an awful lot of money.
Yes, I made an awful lot of money out of that, yes. You can start the tape up running again now.
Even before I ask you how much money?
No, have you started it up running?
No, we haven't yet.
Good, well, £4 million.
And now I can start it again?
You can start it running again,
Thank
yes.
you. So, it was purely then for artistic reasons?
Exactly.